Hey, my name's James Nicholson and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I've got more bad news for landlords, unfortunately. The Labour Party have had their conference this week and they really laid it into landlords and got some really bad news that could cost each landlord watching this video £10,000 per property, which is probably not what you want to hear today. We're going to be talking energy performance certificates. They brought back the details on this. They've given us a date when we have to improve the properties. What level do they have to be improved to? And what can you do to get around it? We're going to cover that and more in this video. But before we jump into this, if you haven't done already, do subscribe to the channel over there and hit the bell notification. We've got new content every single day on being a property investor, the property news, interest rates, how to make money in property, how to make sure your property is energy efficient and much more. And while you're here, smash like, tickle like, do something to that like button. That really, really helps me with the YouTube algorithm and helps the channel grow. So thanks to everyone that does that. So the Labour Party conference is today and they're talking EPCs. The language that they're using is they are willing to go to war with landlords. Not great. Now, if you've watched this channel for a while, you'll know what I've been talking about on the channel, where we've been talking about a number of things that are making a lot of landlords flee the market at the moment. You've got Section 24, which has been around for a couple of years, which means tax on your gross rent. That's meant that property is not affordable for a lot of landlords. You've got the budget that's happening in October. Capital gains tax is expected to be increased in that. That's meant more properties from landlords are being listed on the market at the moment. You've got interest rates that have risen, meaning some landlords just don't make any profit on their properties at all at the moment. And there's just lots of stuff going on. You've got this EPC stuff. This was around under the Tory party. Labour's bringing it back pretty much the same as what the Tories had. So I'll go into more details. The problem is 30% of landlords quit. We've got a growing population. We've got more immigration than we've had for decades. And that means there is a severe lack of rental properties. And it's causing a rental crisis, which I believe is going to get worse with this new news today. I think this is not great. And I think some landlords will quit. Now, I won't. I plan to stay in the market because I think if you run as a professional landlord, everything does work out well in the end. And this will ultimately give me less competitors, but it's not great for landlords. So Ed Miliband, he's going to war against the landlords. Interestingly enough, I bet he is a landlord as well, as a lot of MPs are. But the EPC rules, they've brought these back. This was in the Renters' Rights Bill, but it was literally just a line about it, which we didn't have much detail, which is why we didn't talk about it much in the Renters' Rights Bill video that we did, because we were waiting for more information. We've got that today. So what they're saying is that by 2030, I know when I say 2030, the comments are going to go crazy with the World Economic Forum stuff. So comment your opinion on that. The 2030, you as a landlord have to have your property up to a level C. Up to a level C. Now, that means that you've got to have double glazing. It means you've got to have good insulation in the property. Maybe insulation in the roof of the property. Maybe you need to have insulation also in the walls of the property. There's lots of different things you can do. You can put solar onto that property and much, much more. Now, that's all very, very expensive. And where do you start? Well, when you have an EPC already, maybe you've had one recently, you do need one every few years, especially if you want to sell it, or if you bought it, there'll be an EPC. Often they tell you in there what you can do in order to get it up to the next level. In fact, it will say you're an EPC D. If you did certain things, the achievable EPC for this property is a B or a C or whatever it is. So that will give you some guidance on what the EPC people want you to do and move you in the right direction. Now, this could cause a lot of problems because not lots of landlords have just £10,000, which is what you've got to spend per property, just sitting there, waiting to improve their property. In fact, if you are an accidental landlord, you own one property or two properties, maybe for you guys, you haven't made that property, that profit in a year or two, because you've had the higher interest rates, you've had the new tax and stuff like that. And so what will happen is those landlords will just quit. More landlords, 100% after today's decision, are going to quit the market, which means supply will dwindle, demand will probably increase still, and rents will go through the roof, which is not great for anybody. So the EPC standard is a level C. Now, some properties, that's going to be quite easy to get, right? Maybe you just need to put a little bit of insulation in the loft for 500 quid and that will sort it out. But some Victorian properties, maybe they've got sash windows and you've got to install secondary glazing, which is very, very expensive. Maybe that's not achievable. Now, what they're proposing is if you can't get it to level C and you do nothing about it, you will not be able to rent that property. That is going to be a big problem. I don't know what would happen in that scenario if you had a tenant and they don't leave. What happens then? These are the things that have got to be discussed in this bill when it starts going through. But this probably will be tied into the Renters' Rights Bill. That's where initially this started off. Now, what the Conservatives, the Tories are hinting at is that they will go to the Tory policy was that you have to spend a minimum of £10,000 in order to do your best to get that property up to a satisfactory standard. Now, here's where this could be a problem, because I saw in the comments, I've read a few articles on this today, where one landlord said that he spent 45 grand doing his property up, adding insulation, adding double glazing, all these extra parts to that property, and it still was a low level D. However, here's where the problem stands. He spent that money in history, in times gone by. That is unlikely to count towards that £10,000. What will probably happen is they'll say from now until 2030, anything you spend maybe in 2025 until 2030 is included in that £10,000 if you include it in your tax returns and it's all documented and stuff like that. Stuff that you did previously, unlikely to count. And that means that those landlords that have already tried to get their property up to an EPC of level C and spent tens of thousands of pounds will be unfairly penalised for work they've already done, and they'll have to continue to spend more. What will also happen is I've got a couple of properties where I do understand we will need to do some work to improve it to level C or as close as we can get it. Fine. But when do I do that work? Because I could get that work done this week, but I can't, because until this becomes law, until this 10,000 has a date, anything spent after maybe January the 1st, 2025 or the summer of 2025 or wherever it is, then I would hold back on that work. So that's not great for the tenant, because if I spent 10 grand, I got new windows, I didn't get it to a level C, I would then have to spend £10,000 more. So this kind of stops work being done as well if it's not done quick enough. So I could see problems with that as well. How many properties does this impact? That's the good question. 2.9 million properties are rented out that are lower than a C. 2.9 million properties are below a level C. That is 55% of the rental stock. 55% of properties that are rented out currently would be impacted by this. Now, great, let's force everyone to get the work done. But here's the problem. There is a shortfall of 250 skilled labourers to do this work. We don't have the builders to do this work, particularly after Brexit. We don't have lots of trade people. And even if you want to, even if you've got the money, it's going to be hard to get this work done in a timely manner. That's something that we've got to consider here as well. So while I agree that we want to be a greener planet, we want to make the world better for our children, totally agree with that. I've got 2 girls myself and hopefully grandkids one day. So I totally understand that and I agree with that. What I don't believe though is that either party, Labour or Tories, are doing this in the right way. I think there needs to be a more measured approach. There needs to be some support for landlords. It could be maybe financing up front that they pay back. You've done bounce back loans to help businesses out. You've had all this bailout for banks and stuff like that before. If landlords could get some sort of funding, but they paid back the taxpayer for that. I'm not expecting them to get new double glazing in their property, but if you could fund them and say, look, you have to pay us back over a period of time, and if you don't, there's a charge on the property, so the government would always get the money back and make a little bit of profit on interest maybe. I think that's the better way to do it. You've got to get some support in there for the landlords. If you don't, and you just roll this down with an iron fist, so many will leave, rents will go through the roof. I know in the comments, there's going to be some renters in there that they're saying, well, who cares? That's the landlord's problem. They're scum and all that kind of stuff. Well, you will care if a ton of landlords leave the market because your rent will rise significantly. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this. I think this is another brutal thing for landlords, and it's not been a great start from Labour, particularly for landlords. Do comment below, do smash like, do check out all the other content on my channel, including this video right here.